When you join ASUG, you'll never face an SAP challenge alone again. We connect our members to exclusive educational opportunities and a community of like-minded peers, so you can get the most value from your SAP investment. Get smart fast and learn from the best. Stay on the leading edge of SAP practices and get access to the latest research, insights, and unbiased editorial and interviews from industry experts and your peers. Expand your network. ASUG makes up the biggest, most diverse, and most engaged SAP user group in the world. Any question or challenge you have, there's someone who's seen it before. Connect with a network of 130,000 plus SAP savvy professionals to solve complex business challenges, work smarter, and expand your SAP skills. Get set to lead. Improve your SAP expertise by collaborating with peers to solve business challenges and find innovative solutions. With 38 regional chapters, you and your teams can connect and meet with other SAP professionals and take advantage of dozens of speaking and leadership opportunities throughout the year where you can share your ideas. Become a leader in the ASUG community by leading a local chapter, joining our executive exchange, and participating in one of our 13 and growing ASUG Alliance groups, or make connections and learn at ASUG events. Keep learning, connecting, and growing with ASUG.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to SAP S/4HANA Migration Without the Stress, automating SAP roles for speed and security. I'm Heather Lima and I'm a content producer here at ASUG. You will receive a post-event email after this webcast, which will be recorded, with a link to the on-demand recording. If you feel like a colleague will benefit from it, go ahead and forward it on, but you'll also receive a link to the survey. Please take a moment to take that 2-question survey. We like to know what you think. The survey will also pop up on your screen following the webcast. If you have any questions, go ahead and enter them in that Q&A box. We'll be answering questions around the end of the webcast, and anything that we don't get to today, we'll be sure to answer offline. Now, I'll hand off the webcast to our speaker, Alan Cutting with Pathlock. Alan, take it away.
Thank you, Heather. Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about S/4HANA migration without the stress, automating your SAP roles for speed and security. We'll start with an introduction and then talk about the challenges with role redesigns and S/4HANA migrations. That doesn't look right. We'll talk about 4 ways to ease the road to HANA with less stress, and then we'll talk about a Pathlock tool called Role Management, which uses these 4 ways to dramatically reduce your implementation time in a role redesign for HANA. So my name is Alan Cutting. I've been in SAP for a bit over 25 years. In that time, I've done quite a few projects, large and small, in SAP security, SAP GRC, and Pathlock GRC. I've also worked in production support, so I know something about role maintenance. I'm certified in IT security as well as IT systems auditor. So Pathlock, as you may know, was formed a few years ago when a number of the leaders in ERP governance came together. Today we have over 1,300 customers worldwide, and we offer a complete security suite for access governance, continuous controls, and cybersecurity controls. We have a team of certified auditors and application specialists in SAP, Oracle, Workday, etc. Excuse me. So Pathlock has got products which cover every phase of the access governance life cycle. Excuse me. Today we'll be talking about role design. If you have questions on these other parts, I'm sure our guys would love to hear from you and tell you what we can do. So now some of the challenges with role redesign in HANA migrations. Why do we need to periodically revise security roles? You may have separations of duties, issues in the current roles. There can be business changes, organization changes of a large scale, not of just minor ones going on. Mergers, spin-offs, acquisitions. The role structure may be difficult to understand. It may be that the people who originally designed the roles have moved on and the documentation doesn't really help much. Some role naming conventions are basically code, so if you're not up to speed on the code, it can really be hard to tell what to do. There may be duplication between roles. You see a number of roles with similar names, and it's hard to tell what the difference is between them. Over time, you may have a lot of unused transactions in the roles, or there may have been transaction changes that have taken place that you may not have kept up on. And finally, license optimization, which years ago, I don't think it got very much emphasis when you were designing roles. You put in a bunch of transactions you thought that people in that area would need, and those transactions had security objects that went along with them, and they all went into the role. Now, SAP is changing some of their license measurement tools, particularly with SAP Rise. And as I understand it, you can be charged by objects that you have in your roles rather than what you're actually doing. So if you got a lot of extra stuff in roles and some of it is expensive from a license point of view, you could be paying a substantial license premiums for the role design that you have right now. Excuse me. So why don't we do role redesigns more often? Time is a big consideration. It takes time to do a role redesign. If you're going to do it right, you've got to talk with the different business organizations, find out what access they think they need in the roles, get some of their time. You need their time for testing of the roles once they're done. And all at the time costs money, of course. You may have to bring in outside contractors or consultants. You might have to pay overtime on some of the testing. So there is a cost aspect. You may not have the skills in-house for a role redesign. So again, you may have consulting firms coming in to help you with that. There are risks with the role redesigns because if the roles are not tested thoroughly in completely, every transaction would be ideal. You may get into production and some stuff doesn't work. Hopefully it's not the really big stuff, but it could be something big, like a payroll not running the first time after a place goes live. In this case, that was a new project that was stood up, and it had been tested early on, but as stuff was changed closer to go live, something changed and security was not retested. And I actually saw that, not my group, but for another group, and it wasn't pretty. Finally, you may have the security people or management in general may have had a previous project with a role redesign, and they've got unpleasant memories, and they're not really in a hurry to go back and do that again. Migrating to S/4HANA has got its own challenges. They re-engineered their solutions for business processes. They wanted to reduce the need for custom programs that up to now companies may have been forced to add. This has caused major changes, what they call simplifications in processes and data models. It's had a huge impact on transactions. Many transactions from ECC have been replaced. There are lots of new Fiori tiles. So overall, it's a huge impact on security. And really, most of your transactions ought to be tested before you go live. I don't know if that's feasible for a lot of companies, but ideally you would do that to avoid surprises. Finally, I've seen a push for rapid migrations, which I think are primarily based over the infrastructure, moving on to the new hardware, and some very aggressive dates given for that. When they're setting those dates, they're not talking to the security team and all the work they got to do. So there's a pretty good chance that security is going to be under the gun for the whole length of the project. Four ways ways that we can ease the pain in going to HANA. I think some of my slides haven't been changed. So number one would be to base your new roles on transactions that people actually use. Most users only use 40, maybe 50% of the transactions that they have. If you can simplify that and take away what they don't need, you can eliminate the objects that are being called in as well. You can reduce your validation time, your testing time by 40 to 50% right there. You can also reduce your license cost if some of those objects you no longer need in a role are expensive objects. You could get lower license costs. A second method would be to reduce your analysis time on the new S4 transactions on the functionality. So as I mentioned, with every upgrade you do with SAP, even version upgrades in ECC, there are transaction changes and additions with each release. In HANA, it's particularly pronounced. There are probably thousands of new transactions in HANA, and the Fiori tiles, the number of them grow year after year. So security has to reference these simplification guides from SAP, which really takes some going through to get through them. It can take a couple weeks easily getting through there and see what transactions have been impacted and what's going to change in your new roles. Number three is to automate the building of your ABAP and Fiori roles. This will give you better consistency, accuracy, and time savings in doing that. Particularly on the Fiori, well, on both sides, but on the Fiori side, if you can automate some of that, it can save you a lot of lookups that you would otherwise have to do. Also, if you automate, you can track the status of your roles, what progress you've made in them throughout the process, and that eliminates more manual work of keeping track of them. Finally, you can use automation to reduce the testing time and improve results. Testing can be very frustrating because it's normally done in QA, and you test the new roles on test IDs, and hopefully the new roles work, but a lot of times they need tweaking. When that happens, you run into a security block, and generally you've got to wait for security to fix the roles. You've got to send them what you were doing and a trace of what you were doing. They fix it and possibly have to retransport the role. And so meanwhile, you got to move to a different security script that you're testing. And after you encounter a number of those transactions for a day, as a tester, you're kind of inclined to bag it and go back to your day job. So it starts getting hard to get business user time for tests. And as a result, all of your transactions, even what you plan to do, may not get done before you go live, which doesn't move for this generally. So a lot of stuff may not have been tested well. Now we're going to look at how the Pathlock role management tool can help you. And it uses these methods that we just went through. So I'll show you how it does that. So first about the role management suite, it's made up of 3 components: role designer, which is for creating new roles, generally role redesign projects; role validation for testing. It can be used on new roles and existing roles; and role lifecycle management, which is for pre-existing roles that were not created in the tool, for working on those and testing them moving forward. Basically, this last one, originally our tool did not work on old roles, and customers that use the new functionality for new roles really wanted us to add that capability to pre-existing roles. So that's what's been done. It's taken the new technology so you can use it on the older roles. Some of the features in the role designer module, I should say that today we're mainly going to go over role designer and validation. We won't be covering role lifecycle management today. So role designer automates many of the tasks in designing, building, and testing security roles. It can greatly reduce the length of role redesign projects. The roles it builds are based on least privilege. They are reviewed for separations of duties, risk prior to role creation. And it includes a Fiori role builder. It has automated unit testing of roles. It offers stress-free validation testing, something that I think you'll really like, and it lowers your risk during go live. So getting back to the 4 ways that we listed for eliminating stress while migrating to HANA. The first was base your roles on transactions that people actually use. So role designer and its components will capture transaction usage and consolidate that data by position, by work position. It will show the roles, the transactions that have actually been used, and you can review those. You can add to them if you want, but it will give you some statistics on role usage. And then you can include those desired roles in a proposed new role with a click of a button. If you do this, you can lower the volume of your transactions to test by 40 to 60%. So big time and money saver there. This is an example of one of the analysis pages. Over here on the left, you've got the transactions and their descriptions. Up here, we have the role, which is in the USA. It's in the finance department, and it's accounts payable clerk. And we analyzed 4 users for this role. You could analyze much more, but this is a demo system, so we've got 4 users that were analyzed. So these are the number of times they executed these transactions. A more accurate term would be their interactions with different transactions. And here we have the number of users that did each. So of these 4 users, only one did this call asset list transaction, but all 4 of these users displayed asset master records. So the column here is key, the usage percent. If you have more users, let's say you attach 10 users, these increments would be in 10% increments rather than 25. And you're looking for the transactions that really have big usage, anywhere 50, 60, 70%. It seems like most everybody needs them. For a really low usage, you would question how much those transactions are needed. And maybe they are, but maybe they're not, and they could be put in a firefighter role or something else. It might be that it's a transaction to open a posting period, and you don't need to have that assigned to the role all the time. That would be an accounts payable, but you could get transactions here that just are not needed very often, and maybe you could leave them out. We will build for a given position, we will build a display role, a maintain role, and ultimately put them in a composite role. So over here, we show how we've got the transactions coded, and if you disagree with our coding, this can be changed. So the second method to ease your stress and migrating is automate the research on the S/4HANA transactions. So as I said, in S/4HANA, this is documented in their simplification guide for security. It's around 1,000 pages long for your casual reading. We have a migration provisioning part of this tool that will find impacted transactions. So if you have transactions that you're planning to put in your new roles, you'll do some setup at the beginning of the project to tell them what version of SAP you're migrating from and what you're moving to. And it will tell you basically if it's in your target version that you're going to. This can be used for upgrades as well as HANA, but we're talking about S4 today. So you may have some that XE01 may not exist in S4 HANA. Well, manager will suggest that you use BP instead. When you do this, when you get this suggestion, it will give you the option of adding in the new transaction, of replacing the old transaction, or you can ignore it and just keep the old. So you still have control here, but the machine can help you identify where you got that. And actually where it does is when you're doing your analysis based on your usage, there will be a column over here that will tell you that one of these transactions, let's say, has been impacted by a new role a new transaction, and you'll be able to click on the line and see what's going on. So it's farther on the right on that screen. Excuse me. So the third method is to use a tool for building your security roles. The role designer module does this. For op roles, it builds the roles for you based on selected transaction. It actually builds a proposal first, and you look at that and review it. You review the transactions and the objects that are brought in. You can inactivate anything you want. So far, it's in a virtual environment before it actually creates it in SAP. It will define the role name and a role description. Ultimately, it's going to enter the long text details and a structured role menu into the transaction PFCG screens. It will also define the role, the org levels for the role automatically. Now, there is some upfront work that you will do populating tables within the tool with organization levels, but you do it once up front, and then later on, you don't have to do it again unless there's been a change. So if you are building, let's say, derived roles, and you have 200 plants that have a warehouse receiver that does the same thing in each plant, and they're derived, and maybe those receivers have got 5 different roles, instead of manually updating the organizations for those 200 plants for all 5 roles, the tool will do that for you. You set this up front. And somebody, whether it's finance or the business, they've got this information. You need it to build your derived roles anyway. You just do it up front and one time. It's uploadable and you're done with it. We also have something called template roles. This is used if you don't have history to build on. You can build some roles based on industry typical transactions, at least have a starting point for the roles. When you've reviewed the role proposal, you can have the tool do a separations of duties check, and then you can deal with any risks that are uncovered. You can deal with them at this time. Maybe you remove some of the transactions and either have to put them in a different position, or maybe you will have firefighter roles that will do that. But in any case, you'll be aware of the risks that are within the roles. You can accept the risk line by line, critical or risk by risk, or you can choose to take care of them at this time. Ultimately, you can get an approval of this before you actually build the roles, but we're actually going to cover that in another section. Once approved, you can build standalone, maintain, display roles, and put them into a composite role, which will be a position or a job role. You can create master and derived roles as defined. You can also do automated unit testing of the roles to make sure that they will open up the role when executed, it will open. It will not guarantee that you can do everything you want to within the role, but it will guarantee that the role will open. That's usually a manual process. Continuing, Role Designer also helps you out on the Fiori side. It can create Fiori roles with the automatic creation of spaces and pages. it will look up the services for you. You won't have to look those up. Apps can be built on transactional usage or via categories like line of business, application component, and industry. The Fiori roles are then added into the composite role that we built for the jobs position. The tool will work with deployments where you've got everything in one system, as well as deployments where you've got a separate front end, maybe that's web facing, and a back end server. We can accommodate that as well. Finally, use automation to reduce your testing time and improve results. I've already mentioned the unit testing, that they can actually get into each transaction. The second part of automation is what we call role validation or testing. And in this, it's a little bit different from what you've done in the past or what most of you have done in the past. In this, users will perform their usual work in production. And then RM has an automated trace and evaluation routine, which is going to determine if the new role has sufficient access or not. We can talk about this a little bit more in a minute. This is a sample role validation report. So this is not a nasty trace screen that security normally looks at that can go on for hundreds of pages. In this case, the tool has summarized what's going on. So in this case, we're only really interested in the reference user failures. The others, normally, you don't really need to look at them, and you could actually filter them out. I'm in the security side. I'd like to see the total picture of what's going on. So I've got them displayed because these give you some information. But the reference user means that the new role that you have given or assigned out to some users, it does not have all the access it needs for this transaction in this transaction. It shows you particularly what they're missing, security objects and field values. And the neat thing is that for these apply to the reference user, which are the ones you want to take corrective action on, you can push a button over here and it will automatically update these roles back down in production. And you can get them transported to production again and continue your validation. How am I doing at time? I'm okay. Yeah, I've got to remember where I am in the presentation. Some of these other type things, the users have some separate authorizations still attached to them. Actually, it's their old access that the accounts payable people would have had yesterday. The tool has a fallback function where rather than just outright failing on the failures here in yellow, it'll check to see if they had this access yesterday and they still have it today. And separately, it'll code that. And if they have it today, it's going to let them proceed with this during their testing. So they'll be able to continue their work even though the new role has some shortcomings. What the second line tells me is they tried to do something that they do not normally have. It causes them something called a user authorization error. and we don't want to give that to them, but I can see that they did it. There also may be transactions that were excluded in the new role because the transaction is locked, or maybe we had to remove it because it caused an SOD. So maybe they did have it in the past, but it caused an SOD, so we did have to remove it. I get the other information here, so that's why I like seeing it. But generally, you could just look at the failures. We've got some other things that the role management tool does. It does provide workflow approvals before actually building the role in the equivalent of PFCG and assigning the role in deployment. You can get approvals for both of that. The rollout is done in automated stages to lower risk and build confidence. And this is basically the safety net that I talked about in the last page, where the users are going to get the new roles, like you might think of it as one bucket of roles, the new position, but they're still going to have a safety net, the access that they had yesterday in the same job. If they had it yesterday, in most cases, they'll still be able to do it today. We'll just capture the error. So this lets you get realistic validation in production of stuff that they're actually using day to day. As you test these and fix the roles day by day, you'll be gathering confidence on when it's safe to take the safety net away. So there are a couple of stages of this that we go through before we totally remove the safety net. There's also some role quality checks that can be put in to give kind of a report card on the role quality. That's optional. There's also a KPI dashboard on the overall progress of the role deployment of your project, so you can see how that's done. That's automated. That's this here. Actually, I think it's separate, but there's actually a role status report that shows where roles are in the rollout process. We've got a full section of the tool that contains audit reports, so you get full visibility to what's gone on within the tool, either what the tool is doing or what the security operator, as he uses the tool, have done, or what the workflow approvers have done. Maybe they sent something back for rework. We'll see that. Finally, here, role manager creates detailed documentation for each role in PDF format. So that's really nifty and a big time saver as well. So once again, this was ways to ease your stress in your move to HANA. And we talked about basing your roles on transactions that people actually use, automating your research on S/4HANA transaction changes, use a build for automating role creation, use a role tool for validating your new roles, and use project manager tools for approvals, role status, and audit reports. So that's it on my slides, and I will open it up for questions now.
Great. Thank you so much, Alan. That was fantastic. We did have a few questions come in, and if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and enter them in that Q&A box. So the first question that we have is, how does the safety net work? How does the user have the access to the associated role? Is it through a reference ID?
Yes. Yeah, that probably came from a security person, but yes, it is checking a reference ID. And SAP, when it does traces, it's going to look at the reference IDs first. So it's going to check our new roles first. If they pass, then the role passes for that. They can continue work. If it fails, they will next check the user's old access, which we did not remove. And if they pass that, they can continue. If they fail, then it will log that the user failed as well and give you the reason. And then security can make a decision or work with the business and make a decision on how to handle.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So how are false positives handled in trace analysis?
Yeah, I was thinking of the prior question. On the prior question, I was going to say that the integration of the reference user in the tool, the measured rollout that it can do, and something else. The validation, easy to read reports are things that the tool brings you in the validation rather than just the reference user. On the new question, false positives. If you get a false positive, you will see it on the report. And I'm not sure on the first time you hit it, I'm not sure if you're going to fail or not, but there are a number of utilities that come with the tool. I'm not sure if you call them reports, but more like utilities and filters, so that if you get objects that are showing up a lot, and maybe they're stopping the show or maybe they're passing, but let's say it's object SALV layout and it's showing up, and you know that you do not want to assign it because of its evil side effects. You can filter that out so you won't see it anymore in the traces, and you can do that on different objects that may show up as false positive, so that as you get down the road, they won't keep showing up on your reports within the tool. If you're looking outside the tool, they'll still be there. Yeah, good question.
We're also having a lot of questions about RM. They're asking if it's a tool from Pathlock or from SAP.
It's a tool from Pathlock. It previously was called Authorization Architect, or AA for short, and it's been out, I think, close around 4 years, but it was AA at first, and it included the functionality, or a lot of the functionality that I've shown you, as far as the automatic analysis, role build, and validation. And then when we expanded it with role lifecycle management, combined some stuff from another tool of ours, and another tool that has to do with, especially for derived roles, they made a broader suite, and so it became RM at that point. But it's developed in-house by Pathlock and our preceding company that originally did Authorization Architect.
Can it integrate with ECC or S4HANA?
Yes, with both of them, and we've integrated back to some fairly old implementations. I have some customers that, one thing I would add was that the tool is up to now, at least, it's been steadily been updated with new functionality. So each quarter, there's been a lot of new stuff coming out. I don't know. I can't project if that continues, but up to now, there's been a lot of changes to it, and some of them rely on newer versions of SAP. So, like the traces that we use during validation, SAP had a change a few years ago, a trace that is not available on older versions of SAP. In that case, we have the ability to use the older version, which is it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, some of which are very nice and make your life easier, but we can trace with the older tool. So yeah, it works on HANA and on the older systems. I can't offhand say, just how far back it goes. I don't want to speculate there, but we have people here that could answer that question if it was relevant to someone.
Okay, great. Yes, because we also have a question, does it integrate with GRC IAG for future stable stage?
I'm not familiar with IAG. I'm thinking that may be the future SAP tool, but I haven't followed what SAP is doing that well. So we'll have to pick that one up and get back to you. Okay. In general, our tools are standalone of Pathlock, and we got our own GRC tools that do separations of duty, emergency access management, pulling history from SAP, things like that. We have our own suite on that, and we do not integrate with SAP's tool for their tools for that. We can translate their stuff over to our stuff if they're migrating in many cases, but we do not have a live link to their tools.
Got it.
They are a partner, so I mean we're a partner with them. We don't say anything bad because we work with them.
Of course. Yeah, no, people are asking about the tools used for S/4HANA migration, conversion, also tools used for building ABAP and Fiori. They're just asking what all tools you recommend for those.
Our stuff is that I've discussed today is proprietary. I'm not on the developer team. I'm on the team that implements it for our customers. The developers may, or someone else may have researched the market as far as what's out there, but I have not. So I can't tell you about what other people are putting out. I've been to trade shows, so I guess I've seen some, but I don't think it's appropriate that I talk about other tools, but everything I've described is included with the role manager software. So like the stuff you need for the rule set, we include our rule set that we have for our separations of duty tool. Now it's a licensed version of that tool. It's licensed. No, it's not. That's not the word I mean. It's a runtime version, which means we use the functionality from that tool that we need, but you can't run the tool independently. We sell the tool independently, but that's an independent tool, as is emergency access. That's an independent tool. But for getting the transaction history, let's say they get 13 months of history, so you can see what someone has done during the end of year process, when maybe they've used stuff that has not been used in a year. We can capture that if the data is still available, or if you leave our tool running, we can capture that and preserve it indefinitely, until you delete it. So you can be capturing that kind of information before you actually start the role redesign. That's also an independent tool that can be purchased if you see yourself doing a role migration on down the line, but you want to start capturing the transaction data now. That's something you can talk to our folks about. But access to that runtime is also included in this tool.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
any
would
questions
say
about
that,
tools we'll answer offline.
Yeah, there's an immense amount of stuff in the tool. I would say that I have to work at it to keep track with the newer stuff that is added to make sure I'm aware of what's in there. There are people out there that will want to build it themselves, and there are parts of this that I can see how you could have a intelligent person build a part. What's really going to be hard is to do all of the integration that's been done here, to have it in one place and it talks to the different parts. That's really someone that has to put a massive amount of hours in to do that. So I think it's worth a look, guys, but it's your money, and I know you got to sell it to the people that spend the money. So
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift topics here a bit. When there is a migration from ECC to S/4HANA, do existing user status, system conditions, all the predefined fields automatically populate, or is that something that needs to be done manually?
Well, as far as the tool, the tool is not migrating your user master data, so I'm not involved with that. I would assume that is migrated over. If the equivalent or a map field exists, I would think that there would be utilities for that, but I can't actually speak to that. For us, there are challenges in the S4 in which a lot of companies right now, and this isn't to throw mud, because I've worked for companies where the roles right now have been in probably since the Y2K migration back in 1999, or sometime directly after that. There are roles that were literally designed 20 years ago, and a hodgepodge of roles and implementations that have taken place back then or since then. You may or may not have done a role redesign, and you may have a mess out there. You may have inherited your roles from a company that you spun off from, and a lot of the stuff doesn't make sense from your division. I've been through those kind of things. For that reason, before you move directly to HANA, we suggest that you do your cleanup, if it's not too late, that you do it in ECC and get your positions laid out, see what transactions that people actually need, and eliminate half the transactions, or in some cases 70% of the transactions in roles. Eliminate them, because they're not being used. You don't need to import those objects or test them and start new. We believe in doing the cleanup first in ECC, and then when you're ready to move to HANA and you get a HANA system stood up in development, you can do run the migration in our tool in the role lifecycle management, run the utility to upgrade them to their HANA T codes. You can do a lot more of your Fiori roles in HANA there. It'll be a much easier project to get done, just upgrading roles rather than creating from new. That would be much easier, but you do it in 2 steps, and that's what our developer recommends. He's put a lot of thought into it.
Thank you for those insights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Regarding, migrating over, how are structural authorizations impacted during the role redesign?
I don't think we're going to get into those at all. I would need to take that back to the development team. I have not encountered those in the customers that I have worked on since I came onto the project or the implementation team. But if you write that down, we can run that by the tech team and get back.
No problem. So regarding transaction usage analysis, how are HCM transactions that have multiple actions handled?
I don't think I can answer that. Again, I can ask, but the tool is gonna look at their SAP transaction usage, and in some cases it would be looking at their SAP object values. So if they're using SAP object values to narrow down their access, it will use that. I'm not aware that it goes into the HR module as well. I don't think it does. I know a lot of people have been getting away from that, but I can verify with the developer. I don't think we touch those.
Okay.
Would be my impression.
Gotcha. Are there any prerequisites for using the role management tools?
There are SAP versions that I don't have them right on hand, but the first thing that we'll ask you will be your SAP versions, and are you using any of Pathlock Native, which is what we call the old Security Weaver branded software. If you're using those, so we take that into account during installations. But other than the SAP version, which generally we can deal with, it's just we have to adjust the transports of what we're bringing in. I don't think there are prerequisites per se. Again, we'll have the developer look at that and see if he sees something that I don't.
Of course. Okay, well, we have time for one more question. So let me just end it with, how do you know what people have done in production?
Okay. SAP in their basis transactions, they've got a function that keeps track of what every user is doing in the system. In different places, they've got the transactions that they execute. They may, if they're doing any update action, they either have document numbers or they may have tables that you've updated, but they gather that information anyway. The problem is that very quickly they summarize it because it takes a lot of space. And so after a week or 2 weeks, they start summarizing the data and you start losing the detail. And pretty soon it's not of any use for building roles, or I shouldn't say not of any use, but it's not of much use. So what we do is on a daily or even an intraday basis, I'll talk fast, we copy off the SAP information, we compress it, we save just what we need, and we bring it in through our transaction archive program. And there are various tools of ours can use it. As I said, a runtime version of TA is included. It can't do anything about the basically greater than 3 months, the activity has been lost. It can't do much about that, but it can preserve the other stuff so that the sooner you get it running, even in advance of the rest of the tool, the sooner you can be keeping the old stuff longer. So I'm kind of out of time on that one, I guess.
You're out of time, but if you'd like to finish your thought, you're more than welcome to.
Well, I would just add that ideally, in the best of worlds, you would have 13 months of information. So our old customer who had transaction archive, they've got that. So they're golden. If you see it 2 years from now, if you know you're going to migrate, TA would be worth talking to our accounts about. I know nothing about the selling side of the business, but it would be worth talking to them about to start grabbing the history. For people that get the tool, we advise them install it and get it into production immediately, even if it takes you 2 or 3 months before you're ready to use the tool in production. Do that so that you can get 3 months now, and to 3 months later, that'll add up to at some point 6 months. The other thing is that since we have the safety net in the validation, it really takes the stress off at go live, because in most cases you got the access that these people had yesterday, or you could manually put on a safety net of comparable access, and that might get complicated. So forget I said that, I guess, but generally you're going to have that safety net. There's some bright people on the call, so they'll call me out on it, possibly. Generally, you have that safety net. So day one, instead of scrambling because something is missing or broke, they can fall back on greater access, and we record it and we deal with it, but they can keep working. Well, the roles that we're creating are smaller than what they used to have. We took away a whole bunch of activities, transactions. We took away the objects that those transactions were calling in, and both of those are less risk. So the roles have less risk in them now than they did before. And then you get to review them, and in the role proposal part, you get to inactivate objects if you want to then, and see if it works. And also, what else? Also, you run a separations of duty rule set against a new role, which identifies the commonly recognized risks that you can have in roles. We read our rule set. We can read a competing rule set. If you provide it to us, we can read it on a one-time basis. We can translate it for you, or you can translate it, and we can get it into the system. So you can have your identified risk there. We run against that rule set, so you know what the risks are in the rule, and then you can either remove the transactions that are causing it, maybe the objects if it's at the object level. You can remove those, or you can take note of them and accept them at this point in the game. So we believe our rules, even though they have been wrung out in quality, we believe we can demonstrate that they contain less risk than the old ones did. But you're welcome to do all the negative testing in QA that you want. I would say, since you've got a safety net for functionality, that you concentrate on the dangerous stuff that you're afraid of. Can I create a new vendor and process an invoice from that new vendor, which happens to be me? You can test for that kind of stuff in quality, and not so much on, can I process an invoice, because they're going to have a safety net for that kind of stuff. So the point I'm getting to is that the safety net, there's really there's not a whole lot of risk in keeping that in place as long as you want. You don't have to turn it off 2 weeks after the project goes live, or even 4 weeks. You can keep it on until month end, or if you're in the back half of the year, maybe you keep it in till year end processing is done. So that's all can help you, have a safer cutover. And I forgot what the question was, but there it is.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your insight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. You can watch this webcast on demand. You will receive a post-event email tomorrow with the link to it, but it's basically the original link that you came to. And the slides will be available. The PDF version of the slides will be available. And please pause a moment to take that 2-question survey. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day.
And thank you. And for questions we did get to, we will get back to you. It may take a few days for us to get through them in combination with our other work, but we will respond. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye now.